Let me paint you a picture. It's early March. The ground is just starting to thaw. You're flipping through a seed catalog, already excited about the season ahead. And then you start doing the math. Seeds, transplants, mulch, fertilizer, and compost. Always compost. You tell yourself you'll buy fewer bags this year, but by the time you've loaded up your car at the garden center, you've spent $60, maybe $80 just on compost alone. And you haven't even planted anything yet. I was that person for a long time. Every single spring, same bags, same mediocre results. My tomatoes were fine. My squash was okay. But the soil never felt alive. It was always a little too compacted, a little too pale, a little too quick to dry out between waterings. What changed everything for me wasn't a new fertilizer or a fancy raised bed system. It was a conversation with an elderly Amish farmer at a roadside market in Ohio. He was selling vegetables that looked almost unreal. Deep red tomatoes, dark leafy greens, fat carrots. I asked him what his secret was. He smiled, wiped his hands on his trousers, and said, "We feed the soil. The soil feeds us. We never break that circle." That one sentence completely rewired how I think about gardening. The Amish approach to soil health isn't complicated. It doesn't involve products you order online or systems that take an engineering degree to manage. It's built on one foundational idea that modern agriculture has almost entirely forgotten. Waste is just a resource in the wrong place. In Amish households, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana, nothing organic gets thrown away. Not the carrot tops, not the chicken bedding, not the autumn leaves that pile up along the fence line, not even the weeds pulled from the garden rows. Everything gets collected, layered, and returned to the earth. The result isn't just compost. It's a living, breathing soil amendment that improves with every single cycle. What the Amish practice is something soil scientists now call closed-loop organic recycling. Research from institutions like the Rodale Institute has shown that homemade compost made from diverse local materials contains a far richer community of beneficial bacteria, fungi, and microorganisms than anything processed commercially. Those microorganisms are the engine of a healthy garden. They break down nutrients into forms plants can actually absorb. They suppress soil-borne diseases. They improve drainage and water retention at the same time. No bag of compost from a big box store can replicate that. But here's what I want you to understand before we get into the method. The reason most people fail at composting isn't laziness. It isn't lack of materials. It's that nobody ever explained the underlying logic clearly enough. Once you understand why each step works, the whole thing clicks into place and you never have to think hard about it again. Step 1. Think like a farmer, not a consumer. Before you touch a single piece of material, you need to shift your mindset. Most of us have been trained to think of organic waste as garbage. Banana peels go in the bin. Grass clippings get bagged up for the truck. Fallen leaves get raked to the curb. The Amish don't see any of that as waste. They see it as next year's garden. Start by taking a walk around your property and your kitchen with new eyes. What are you currently throwing away that could feed your soil? Coffee grounds from your morning routine. Vegetable scraps from dinner prep. Grass clippings after you mow. Dead plant material at the end of the season. Cardboard boxes from deliveries. Paper bags. Even the lint from your dryer if you use natural fiber clothing. This is your raw material. This is what the Amish use. And right now, most of it is going to a landfill. The Amish call this kind of awareness stewardship. In their theology, wasting what the land provides is understood as a failure of responsibility. That might sound heavy, but practically speaking, it just means paying attention to what flows through your household and redirecting it back to the soil instead of to the trash. Step 2. Set up your collection system. Here's where the Amish method diverges most sharply from the way composting is typically taught. Most composting guides tell you to build one pile and add to it continuously. The problem with that approach is that you end up with materials in very different stages of decomposition all mixed together. It becomes hard to manage, hard to turn, and hard to know when anything is actually finished. The Amish use a two-stage system. Simple, practical, and highly effective. Stage 1 is a holding area. This is where fresh material gets collected as it becomes available. Kitchen scraps, fresh grass clippings, green garden waste. This can be as simple as a wooden crate lined with burlap, a plastic bin with holes drilled in the side, and just a covered pile in a corner of the yard. The purpose of this area is purely collection. Now material sits here until you have enough to build a proper batch. Stage 2 is your active compost pile. This is a separate, dedicated pile where you combine everything at once in the right proportions and manage it through to finished compost. The reason this two-stage approach works so well is that it gives you control. You build your active pile when you have the right combination of materials on hand, rather than randomly adding scraps and hoping for the best. You know exactly what went in and you can manage moisture and turning far more precisely. For your Stage 1 collection, keep a small countertop in the kitchen, something with a tight lid to keep odors contained. Empty it into your holding area every 2 to 3 days. For outdoor material, just keep a designated corner or bin nearby. Step 3. Build your active pile the right way. When your holding area has a good volume of green material, it's time to build your active pile. Choose a spot with good drainage. You don't want the base of your pile sitting in standing water. Flat ground that gets morning light and afternoon shade is ideal. And just like the Amish do, place your pile directly on bare soil, not on concrete or gravel. Ground contact allows earthworms and soil microbes to migrate up into the pile naturally and accelerate the process from the bottom. Now, before you start layering, do one thing the Amish do that almost nobody else talks about. Gather your dry brown material first and wet it down. Soak your dried leaves, your shredded cardboard, your straw, the evening before you plan to build the pile. Let it absorb water overnight. The reason is simple. Dry carbon materials are hydrophobic. They repel moisture instead of absorbing it. When you layer dry browns into a pile alongside wet greens, the browns actually pull moisture away from the greens instead of sharing it. Pre-soaking your browns ensures that from the very first layer, the moisture balance is even throughout the pile. It's a small extra step that makes a meaningful difference in how quickly the pile heats up. Now build your pile this way. Start with a 4-inch base of coarse material. Woody stems, small twigs, rough stalks. This creates the airflow channels at the bottom that keep the pile aerobic from the start. Then alternate layers. 4 to 6 inches of pre-soaked brown material, followed by 2 to 3 inches of green material from your holding area. If you have finished compost from previous batch or a scoop of healthy garden soil, scatter a thin layer between every 2 or 3 rounds of browns and greens. This seeds the pile with active microorganisms and gives decomposition a head start. Continue building until the pile is at least 3 feet tall. 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet is your minimum. The internal mass is what generates and holds the heat you need. Step 4. Read your pile. This is the part of Amish composting wisdom that I find most valuable, and it's the hardest to teach from a book or a video, because it's fundamentally about developing observation and intuition. The Amish don't manage their compost piles by calendar. They manage them by reading what the pile is telling them. Here's what to watch and feel for. Within the first 3 to 5 days of building a properly balanced pile, you should notice warmth radiating from the center when you push your hand in about a foot. By the end of the first week, a well-built pile should reach internal temperatures of 130 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. You don't necessarily need a thermometer. You can feel the heat. You can see steam rising from the center when you push a stick down into it on a cool morning. When that heat begins to fade, which usually happens after 10 days to 2 weeks, that's your pile asking to be turned. Not telling you it's failed. Asking for attention. Turn it with a garden fork, moving the outer edges into the center and the center material out to the edges. Within 24 to 48 hours, you'll feel the heat build again. This cycle of heat, cooling, and turning will repeat 3 to 4 times over 8 to 12 weeks. Between turnings, check moisture. Grab a handful from about a foot inside the pile and squeeze. You want to feel damp but not dripping. If it's dry, water it gently with a hose. If it's too wet, fork in a layer of dry brown material. Watch the smell too. A working pile smells like earth and forest. If you catch a sour, vinegary odor, add more browns and turn it. If you smell ammonia, same fix. The smell is your early warning system. Step 5. Harvest and use what you've made. After 8 to 12 weeks of active management, your compost is ready when it no longer looks like anything it used to be. No visible straw. No recognizable kitchen scraps. No intact leaves. Just dark, crumbly, uniform material that smells like a forest floor after rain. If you want to separate out any partially finished material, simply screen your compost through a piece of hardware cloth stretched across a frame. What passes through is finished. What doesn't goes back into your next pile. Use your finished compost generously. Work 2 to 3 inches into your garden beds each spring before planting. Top dress around perennials and fruiting plants mid-season. Use it to fill holes when transplanting. The Amish apply compost twice a year, spring and fall, and their soil improves measurably every single season as a result. Here's what you'll notice after one full cycle of this. Your soil will hold moisture longer. It will be easier to work. Your plants will show stronger root development and better resistance to stress. Not because you bought something, because you built something. If this gave you a new way to think about your soil and your garden, I want to hear from you in the comments. What are you currently throwing away that could go into a compost pile? What's been stopping you from starting? Drop it below. And if you want more of these deep dives into traditional growing methods that actually hold up to modern science, subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from. See you in the next one.